Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Big D Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glanz. This week we're joined by the ridiculously talented Bob Ewing. Bob is a multidisciplined illustrator and letterer from Indiana. Ian and Dustin have hung out with Bob in person. I've chatted to him in the past, and Lisa's just met him, but I can already sense the friendship blossoming. So this should be a fun chat. Without further ado, let's get into the show.
I think you're right. I think that Lisa and Bob are kindred spirits.
I'm getting that already. I mean, I think we could go as far as to say I've never seen two human beings hit it off so quickly so much.
What about me and you? I feel like when we met, it was like, wow, like maybe we're supposed to be together.
Did a heart suddenly appear?
I don't know. I mean, you, Ian, had a hotel room together, didn't you?
No.
That's
we
true.
had separate hotels, separate rooms.
But you were always in each other's rooms. Why were you always in each other's rooms all the time?
Yeah.
Because we...
Alone on the bed.
Yeah, all right, man. You sound like our wives and fiancés, so... Bob, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it should be fun. I mean, I know we chatted on one of the Design Cuts hangouts, and to be honest, I already inflated your ego quite a lot, saying how much I loved your work. So
yes.
I'm going to have to hold back this episode.
Actually, that was the only reason why I came back, because I needed that little boost.
Good old ego massage. Well, let me break out the massage oil, my friend.
Oh, this will be good. You're missing the purple light, though.
Bob, would you mind, for any of the listeners who might not be familiar with you and your work, giving us like a 30-second overview to you and your world?
Yeah, I am a graphic designer by trade, and because of that, I've become an illustrator and hand letterer. I've been doing this for, about 12, 13 years in the professional world, and then also do quite a bit of freelance on the side. So, how's that? That's like a snapshot.
Short and sweet.
That's beautifully concise.
I can go longer if you need me to.
No, that's absolutely perfect.
May I add in, he has one of my favorite side projects, by the way. He runs Inch by Inch, which is the coolest thing ever. Can you talk about that for a sec?
Yeah, so when I started at Element 3, the agency I work at currently, my good friend Drew Hill and I decided to start a personal project. That kind of turned into what we call Inch by Inch, which is a nonprofit organization that supports youth art education. So we're a nonprofit ourselves, but we donate our proceeds to two charities that support inner city underserved kids with after school and summer school programs, all focusing around traditional artwork and creative writing.
So cool.
And it's a button club. I guess I completely failed to mention that it's like a 1-inch button club. So we have artists from all over the world design buttons for us. Now it's quarterly. It used to be monthly, but now we do it every quarter. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's good times. It's fun. Nice. I'm excited.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Oh, here's the better side. I'm showing this for everyone because it's one of my favorite Inch by Inch packs I own.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can get CSA to design some buttons for you, that's always a good time. So,
yeah, it was irresistible.
Yeah, I know that donut button is like one of my favorite buttons. I have it. Since I have multiples of those, I have it on like a bunch of different stuff. So
nice.
And Bob, one of my favorite projects of yours is the Creative South conference logo.
Yeah.
Which is pretty freaking sweet. Do you mind sharing how that transpired, that whole thing?
Yeah. Let's try and shorten this so it's not a long story, but first time I ventured to Creative South was 2014, which was right in the middle of it was about 200 days into my daily lettering project that I was doing. So I had lettered Creative South. Mike Jones had seen it, and he asked if we could put it on a shirt. So then and we did. It wasn't very great, but it sold. I think they sold like 30 of them. So the next year I did. He was like, "Hey, you want to do another shirt?" And it just so happened that I wanted to. I was excited to, and I did that lettering for a T-shirt. And then the following year, in 2016, Mike had reached out and asked if they could. He didn't even ask. He's like, "Hey, just so you know, this is the new Creative South logo that we're going to use." And he's like,
Nice.
and then he had this like, crap moment. Like, I hope he's okay with that. And I was like him, obviously totally fine with it. Love what they're doing. Creative South, love Mike Jones. So I was like super stoked. And then it's still surreal, like to go to that conference. It's such an amazing conference, but then just to see that little bit of lettering, and what it means to me and it means to the conference, kind of all over the place. It's always kind of amazing. Kind of pinch myself.
And really, it couldn't be on a better conference.
You ever stand by giant versions of it? I saw it on walls, and you're like, "Oh, what, this sort of thing?"
Yeah,
that's me.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I'm always taking pictures of it everywhere when I'm there. So
yeah, I would be too.
So, Bob, I feel like you kind of transpose a lot of different styles. You've got kind of Ian's lettering feel about some of your work. You are a fellow illustrator along with Lisa, and you definitely got some of that retro goodness that Dustin loves so much. If anything, I'd say you're almost like the perfect summary of all four of us.
Yeah.
Some of the best parts, like how did you land on that style? Because I know that's such a common thing with that was our first episode actually, because so many people, it's like, I'm super generic, or I'm floating around and I'm bouncing between stuff. You have such a distinctive style.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That means a lot. I do think at times I settle into a specific style, like this kind of chunky script kind of lettering style. But I think overall, being that that I went to school for graphic design and that I consider myself a designer, you try not to have a style. Like oftentimes you're trying to put your thought process and what you can do into your client's work, but it's not necessarily about what I want to create. It's about creating what is best for the client. So that's something that I've learned over the years, basically how to listen and kind of take what the client says and be able to apply what I do to that. As far as the retro side of things, I was just talking about this recently. I think when I was growing up, I was around my like great aunt and my grandfather and my dad. I was around some of these old things. And I think that gave me an appreciation for it that kind of like rooted in me, that now like I love those things. And I'm like super inspired by people that did that it was a trade. It wasn't, it was a job, but it was like a trade that they went to school for. And the things they were doing with minimal color and like a tenth or a percent of the tools we have today is just incredible, and how it holds up today. And
that's same feel I get. I grew up like being largely raised by my grandmother when I was young, and so I just remember looking in, like, she'd let me look in her closets or her drawers where she would have old board games and magazines. I mean, like the coloring books I'd color in, she just didn't buy coloring books for 40 years. So you'd open them up and it's the same books from like my mom did when she was a kid, and it's very nostalgic. Yeah.
And then I think the lettering actually gave me the confidence to draw again, which led me to like the illustration that I do. And I don't really have an illustration style. A lot of times I'm illustrating for something specific, which is kind of nice. So I don't know if I was like intentionally trying to be versatile as I like grown up, but it wasn't something that I became like aware of until, later in my career.
And what do you prefer the most when you get a job? Would you prefer a client to say, "I just want you to do lettering," or design and lettering, or what's your favorite?
I know for me it's all about branding, and if I can help like bring a brand to life, and there's like a little bit of lettering and some illustration and some nice like graphic design work, and that's all combined together, that's really like my sweet spot. But if I had to choose, if I could just draw some letters, if someone just wants, me to draw some letters, I'm always for that. So
nice.
Cool. Going back to how many days of lettering did you do?
530 some.
Oh, So
Okay,
really,
so but well, before you started that, how good or bad were you at it?
Oh, terrible.
Okay.
Yeah, like I had tried. I was always in that like weird phase where I like appreciated people that were doing lettering, like Ken Barber. I remember Ryan Hamrick. I was always like fond of back then, early on. And like I was always trying to take fonts and like make them do what I wanted to do, like what I wanted to do in my brain, but I could never do it, which is really kind of what led me down the path of what like discovering what lettering is, and that like down that path of like just committing to spending time each day, to learn something that I was passionate about.
So how did you fit that into your day? Because you were working full time, weren't you?
Yeah, a lot of times I would try and do it on lunch break, but most of the time it ended up falling to the evenings, after kids were in bed, or, we'd be sitting on the couch, maybe watching a show or something with my wife. That's mostly when I ended up doing it, which is why it started to become an issue, in my personal relationship, and why ultimately I had to stop it, because it was cutting into, personal time. So
actually, that's similar to me. I didn't do it for as long as you, in terms of I did 6 months straight, and every evening I was practicing my calligraphy. And then my wife said, "It'd be nice if I could see you."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, my wife and I, Steph and I had many a conversations, about the time I was spending on it, and then also like other freelance work and, stuff like that. And that was always a talking point or a conversation point that we had. It just took me a little bit longer to come to grips with stopping, or it really just took me longer to realize like I was putting in more than I was getting out, and that it was time to stop and move on, and let that kind of season of my life be done.
So but now if you're saying that you were putting in more than you were getting out, meaning what? You weren't getting clients, you weren't getting work from it, or you weren't improving?
Yeah, it was more about improving. I had basically, the project wasn't like a 365 project. It wasn't a year or anything. I had just committed to lettering every day to get better at it. And it got to the point where the amount of time and pressure that I was putting on myself to do it each day was more than I was getting out of it. So it was like time, I wasn't, I don't really know how to say that. I was just spending more time on it than what I wasn't getting the same things out of it that I had early on in the project. So
was it a bit like compound interest, where at the beginning it was easy because, there wasn't, people weren't viewing it, there wasn't many people viewing it. You were just starting out,
pressure.
But rather than it just staying on that level where you just didn't matter, but you're getting better and just pushing out, was there like the pressure went up?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, without question. And then it was all, and it became like an addiction, almost like something that I felt like I had to do. And it would always, like throughout the day, it was weighing on me, like what I was going to do, letters that day. And then I got to the point where I was looking back, and the letters that I was creating over, like the last 3 or 4 months, there wasn't like as much exploration as there was in previous months. Like I had just kind of fallen into like a similar style, and that wasn't really the point of it.
Okay, so that's quite interesting, don't you think? That how something that actually initially helped you ends up being a little bit of a. I mean, you obviously had the sense of mind to realize, okay, it's time to move on. This is like kind of run its course. I think maybe some people don't really see that and then hang around too long doing something and they become stale. Yeah,
it's easy to get comfortable and kind of stay in that comfort zone, and that's kind of what I realized. Like you're not growing, you're not pushing yourself. So it's important to know when to say when. And luckily, like my
it's
beautiful
almost like
wife.
At one point, you're just. It sounds like you were just like, I just need to dish this out to alleviate the tension, the stress of knowing how to get it done.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah, so I like spent the last like 3 days kind of coming to grips with it. I think I did like the end, done, and then one other word, I don't know, a couple days that like
people might
like
start worrying though
to wind it down, and then like that finally that next day so it was like 534 days. On the 535th day, like there was like this huge sense of relief that I felt that I didn't that I was like, oh, I don't have to do this. Like I didn't have to do it anyway, but like now I like mentally and personally, I like come to terms with it. So
what do you do now to, keep your creative juices going?
oh,
That
man.
sounds terrible. But you know what I mean? Yeah.
Man, that's a good question. I feel like now I'm better about shutting it down and like spending time with friends and family. I know that's a huge part, like to recharge. Like I've never been able to turn it, as creatives, you can't like turn the switch off. You're always thinking about the project you're working on or thinking about something else. And that's one of the most difficult things to do. It's not like you don't clock in and clock out, every day. But my kids and my family, I've started to lean into them more. And, kids, they don't care how your day was or you come home from work and, it's on. So that helps. But mostly I'm always trying to just try new things or just take on projects that may be a little different, might push me out of my comfort zone a little bit. I don't know. I like to go to antique stores and walk around. That's always one way that gets me.
The thing is, it seems a different thing in America that they like your antique stores have got beautiful typography everywhere, and like in the UK, it's just there's not. Yeah, it's just like grandma's old chest of drawers.
Yeah,
that's it.
We're the same. Yeah. Don't worry.
And and the cars as well. I'm watching some of these programs online on Netflix of like restorers. There's this guy who's got like 300 or so like run down rusty old cars, and they're taking one at a time and restoring them to like what they used to be, and every car is beautiful. And like if you did that in the UK, it was just like, why did you spend all that time on that rubbish?
Yeah, you guys do look like you have a lot of nice stuff to look at.
Yeah.
See, I would assume that you guys, being that you have more history, your country has been around far longer than ours, that there would be more stuff and bigger variants.
We're all buildings, we're not stuff. So if you want a castle, we're okay. If you want some really trendy, like vintage memorabilia, you're out of luck. Like Ian says, it's just like really out of date furniture, but not out of date in a trendy way, out of date in a shit way.
Well, I think the United States was like a master of mass production. So we went through that hyper growth stage in the 20th century where we just mass produced so many things that you can find at everywhere in antique stores.
Yeah, true. And then there's stuff that's harder to find. But then it was also like there's a craftsmanship to it, which I think is one of the things I appreciate the most. Like it was made by hand. So you look at some of the things and you're like, okay, you're not surprised that this thing is still here, 60, 70, 100 years later after it was made, because there was like some thought and intentionality and craftsmanship that was put into it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Which is also why people want to save them, like if there wasn't an emotional attachment to it, like no one would ever rescue this old rusty car and then spend all of the time to, bring it back to what they, what it was in its glory days. Like if there wasn't that like emotional attachment to those things.
You just spoke about emotional attachment. A tip I give to creatives all the time when they're talking about how to build an audience or resonate is that they need to create some kind of emotional connection or resonance or impact on their audience. The audience can't just feel apathetic towards their work. What do you think are some effective ways to maybe do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way is to create things that you're emotionally attached to. That's like the easiest way to start. Because if you love something or you appreciate something, then there's going to be more people that appreciate those things too. And that's how people connect with others is, there's a similarity or a common bond. That's how relationships are formed and started. So that's like the easiest way to kind of jump into that.
And you know what? That's kind of brilliantly simple, because I feel like so many creatives overthink this stuff.
So true.
And I guess they need to ask themselves, like, how do they feel about it? Are you just putting it out to fill a spot in your Instagram schedule? Or are you putting it out because it really makes you feel something awesome?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's so much pressure today that there wasn't before. Like I can't imagine being a kid and growing up in this era of social media. But you're always looking to impress someone else. And like, while that Now, granted, like the likes and the comments and like people appreciating your work, like as a creative and someone that, we put so much into our work, like that will never go away. Like, that revitalizes us. But that can't be like why you do it, because you're only going to get, for a short time, are you going to, understand or appreciate that kind of that attention, like unless there's like a deeper meaning. Yeah, to what or it's always, you're going to have to keep scaling it up. Like, it's similar to a drug. Like, you have to do more, you become addicted to it, and it's like, you need more and more of it. And that's not healthy. It's not why we should be doing things, is, so that other people appreciate it.
Yeah, I actually want to talk a bit about that because I obviously I haven't followed your career since the beginning because, I didn't know you. But I'm assuming your popularity only really kind of took off a lot more when you were doing this daily challenge. So being kind of a nobody, if I can put that in first comments. If I'm no Bobby. To where you are now, do you find yourself adjusting what you put out, how you design, how you think about your work because of your popularity and your status and how much people know you, etc.? Does it have an influence on you creatively?
Maybe less now than it has in the past. I've definitely gone through phases where I cared more about it, or I was curating things to some degree. I guess one thing I've always tried to do is keep my work as personal as possible, which is why like you'll see my family show up in my feed, not nearly as much as my design work, but like it's important to me that like that's there and it's representative, because they're the most important people to me. So I definitely went through phases of like anyone, or seasons of curating stuff and caring too much about what others think, and usually it's the people around me that the people that love me and care about me the most will point that out, that because it would be noticeable to some, and that's like okay, you have to step back and take a look at yourself and what you're doing. But as I get older, I'm 38 years old, definitely more retrospective about how I spend my time and what I do, and the importance of time in general, because it's the one thing that isn't unlimited. We only have a little bit of it. So
it's funny.
How do you?
Same age, and I feel a lot the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're actually about to buy a Porsche, Dustin.
Just saying.
What?
Are you about to buy a Porsche, Dustin?
Not yet. There's other things.
Because I'm getting there, buddy.
You'd have to get one of the new
getting
Porsches that is rivaling Tesla, because it's got seats in the back, so you can put your kids in it.
No, I mean the whole thing is like against that, right? Like you want just the one passenger seat. It's the trying to capture your youth and forget that the kids exist for at least a drive.
Yeah.
Bob, I wanted to ask you. So when we were starting, and Tom made the accurate observation that you do all these different things, and I was like, yeah, why does that tie together in my head and it doesn't conflict when I think about you? And I think it's because when I think about like you and your brand, I think of this is someone that's super easy to work with, and he's really reliable, and he outputs really good quality stuff. Like, so I don't think, oh, he's the inch by inch guy, or he's the guy that did the Creative South thing. I just tend to think, oh, he's really easy to work with and just does really great stuff. And I also never get the sense that you're like super high self-promotional. It always feels like you sort of just fall into things. Oh yeah, I'm doing inch by inch. That just kind of happened. Oh yeah, Charles Anderson just happened to do this for me. Oh yeah, like now my logo's on Creative South. Whoops, I slipped on a banana peel and now my logo's on it. Can you tell me? It's so hard to find designers that are. It doesn't feel like they're really trying to be self-promotional or trying to angle for something. What's your philosophy on that? Are you just a master of hiding that, or do you literally slip on opportunity banana peels?
Yeah. Well, like I really appreciate that. That means a lot. I honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say that luck doesn't play a role in what how our lives transpire. But you also have to like put yourself in the right position, and then also you have to you have to be willing to say yes. You have to be able to, you know, take risks. But it's funny you say that, because I'm like at a point now where I'm feeling stretched thin, and I like often do that. Like something is, you know, it's just, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's more about harmony, I believe. So it's like what, you know, sometimes you may have to work a little more, but then you just shift the other way and you spend, you know, more time with the family. But like I haven't really made this announcement, but since I think this doesn't air, like this doesn't air for a couple of weeks, right? Is that
we'll have to make sure now.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. But I mean, I've talked to work, but I'm actually in the transition of leaving Element 3 now, and to into full-time freelance, as a way to simplify my life, and be like more around my family.
Nice.
I don't know if this is definitely answering your question, but I'm getting there. I often feel like I'm, like I said, a little stretched thin, so things don't get maybe the full attention that they warrant. So like in a way to like, it's just time for me to move on, and be around my family more, and being able to focus on the things that I think are the most important to me, which is family, inch by inch, and then my own like freelance work. So.
Well, good for you, man.
I don't.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I don't know if I really feel like I ever have anything to promote, or self-promotion wise. I feel like I'm often just like trying to share like, this is what I'm working on, or this is something, you know, that I made and I'm excited about it, because I genuinely love what I do. So I don't know if that maybe is where the sense of what you're talking about comes from. That
well, like for instance, for the things that I guess you could pick any project, but do you find that you're actively seeking out, for instance, with Inch by Inch, maybe that's a great example. Did you say, this is what I want to do, I'm going to do this? Or did people say, Bob would be a great person, he's so reliable, he does great work, let's get him involved? Like, do you seek it, or does it tend to come to you because of your personality, perhaps, in your work?
Yeah, I think it comes more from like how I was raised and my work ethic, and just being from the Midwest and seeing, you know, how my parents and, you know, worked for their living, and how they were committed to us, you know, as a family. So I think I feel like I always have to be doing something. I'm not an idle person. I get bored very easily. So
do you mind like digging into the detail of that? Because I think maybe for us and some of the listeners, there could be a misconception, because you seem so chilled with your personality. It's hard to marry that with the idea of like incredible work ethic. And I'm definitely not saying that I think you don't work hard, but from everything you're saying, it sounds like you work super hard. But whenever we chat with you, it's like, how you doing, Bob? And you're like, yeah, like I'm all good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You seem like you could be on a hammock having a pina colada with how you talk, which is such a fantastic thing. You don't seem stressed out your eyeballs. How do you kind of marry that with like, you know, super hard work ethic, and what does that look like on the ground level?
Yeah, I don't know where I get the like non-stressful side of me. I'm not a person that like outwardly shows stress. Like I handle it internally very well, and I actually thrive in it. You know, sometimes I will push off a project until I've like worked it out in my brain. Even if like if I have another project that's due after that one, if I can see the clear endpoint in a project, then I will like knock that out first. Even if it's like due after one that I'm like trying to work on. So like sometimes the pressure of a deadline is needed in what we do. You know, there has to be, otherwise it's just art. You know, you have to have like the client input, and you have to have that deadline. To kind of force us to do things. As far as like not being stressed, not showing stress, I don't really know where that comes from, because I remember, you know, growing up, my dad was we grew up like a middle class family. We didn't necessarily have a lot, but we weren't poor. Like we had enough. And my dad drove a cement mixer for 36 years and put my mom through teaching school and her master's, and then my mom taught for 26 years. So they're like lifetime at what they do. But I don't ever, now I lost my train of thought. I know that played into seeing their work ethic and how they were committed to something, you know, played into like how I am today.
Cool. It's I think it's probably the perfect way to be, because you're essentially getting a lot done, but not giving yourself anxiety. And there's a lot of people that are the opposite. I would say Dustin and I are not the opposite. We're probably half and half. So like we work super hard, but we freak ourselves out. Yeah. I think it's a great way to be. You kind of remind me of one of my old best friends, and we would find him hilarious because he'd be so deadpan about everything that even when stuff went down, we were out one night and this crazy guy on drugs punched him so hard it broke his tooth out of his head. What? And we were saying to him, like, any of us would be in the hospital, would be like upset or whatever, and he was like just exactly as chilled as he normally is. And we're sat around and we're like, are you okay, man? And he's like, yeah, all good. And we're like, doesn't that hurt? And he's like, oh yeah, it hurts me to breathe. Like, but he said it like in such a laid back way. He's like, yeah, I'm in agony every second, and his voice wouldn't change. So
I feel like we all need someone like that. Like I've had people like that in my life, and when you have them, you're just like, they just feel good to be around, because you're like, yeah, because if that happens to me, I curl up on the ground and I cry and I ask for to call an ambulance before I choke on my own blood and die. So to have someone be like, buddy, I just got kicked in the face and lost a tooth the other day. It's all good, buddy. Right. You're gonna be fine, little guy. Let's just get you to the hospital. We all need that guy. And I think that I can see like, need a Bob in our life. Can see how you get invited to do things a lot, because people be like, you guys, we need somebody to even everything out. Calm. Let's get Bob. Call Bob.
Yeah. And Bob, I'm sure for you, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably don't know any other ways. So for you, it just seems normal. But I think in a society of people who can, on the whole, be quite anxious, quite stressed, quite frenetic, it probably is a very attractive trait. And it's actually one that we've barely explored on the show, because none of us are like that.
No.
I wouldn't say. Probably Ian the most laid back. But yeah, like it's such a good trait. Like, I think more people should maybe try and work on that, because who wants to work with a guy who's like literally super stressed? Like, because that's going to rub off on you. It's like, oh, yeah, that's my guy over there. He's like breathing into a paper bag in the corner. It's like, you're going to go for the guy who sets you at ease.
The vision. That's excellent.
Has that benefited your career, have you found? Or maybe you don't even know it's happening. I don't know.
Yeah, he probably doesn't even know. Yeah.
Has calmness under pressure been helpful to you, or has it actually been a detriment?
No, it's definitely been helpful. It's not that I don't have moments of freak out. It's just I don't outwardly deal with that. But yeah, if you're freaking out, then people around you are going to start to freak out. That's for sure. I think it's always been like that. So
Bob, can you say in your regular tonality, I'm freaking out?
I'm freaking out right now.
It's quite scary.
No,
we should sample Bob saying calming phrases, and then when we're getting all worked up in the episode, we'll just like DJ and push down a button, and it'll be like,
just push the Bob button.
Everything is going to be fine.
Yeah,
you don't need to worry.
How anxious
buddy.
Most creatives are. I'm pretty sure the guy behind that Calm meditation app made $1 billion.
Yeah.
So we're going to make the Bob app for creators. And it's like, don't worry about imposter syndrome. It's all going to work itself out, my friend.
And I'm an eternal optimist, so that obviously plays into it. Because I'm just extremely optimistic all the time. But I think we live in a culture now where we're too quick to react. We overreact. Instead of just like taking a moment and thinking about like your actions and how are those going to be portrayed, or like, are you contributing anything with this response? Most of the time, we live it's amazing how the negativity against just other creatives will have against ourselves, which is kind of it's like there's enough this is enough of a public forum, what we do, and there's enough criticism on the outside. Like, you would think people that understand that and do what we do wouldn't live in this world of negativity where they feel like they have to bring others down.
Yes.
It's just, so that's something you see a lot of, and there's just no place for it. Like, I grew up where my mom always said, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, like, don't say anything at all. And like, to some degree, that's true. Like, it's one thing if I'm coming to you for constructive criticism on something, or if you're a friend of mine and you care about me and you feel like you need to be constructive with me, then I will listen to that. But just shouting in the void of the internet negativity is, it's kind of sad. So
I don't think it paints a good picture of you as well. Like Tom was saying earlier about the being, wanting to employ someone that's sort of, on the level or super stressed. But also, if someone's looking through your Twitter feed and all you're doing is ranting about, other people's design.
I can't think of any prominent figures in the world that do that on their Twitter feed.
Well, and just think about it from a practical standpoint. If you're an art director and if you're trying to hire a letterer, so to speak, and it's between two and they're very similar, the price is the same, everything is same, but then you look at their character, or if you know them, know how they are, like, would you hire the one that is always negative, and seems like a hothead, or would you hire the one that is a little more stable and seems to be positive? Because you're going to be working with that person. So, I mean, I don't know, just one way to think about it.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's how people perceive, because you are a walking brand, aren't you? You're the Bob Ewing brand, and every interaction you have with everybody else on the internet is, one, recorded, and two, is what people see. And it's that experience of what, whether it's me viewing your interaction with another designer or someone else, and if you're like hot-headed or you're insulting that person, then that gives me like a sour taste in my mouth about, and then a job comes up and I'm not going to use him because of that reaction he had. So it's you have to really be, even though it's opened up a big world, all your actions are, one, recorded, and two, people are looking on. And I think, people really need to realize that, especially on Twitter, I think is the biggest thing. Just like complaining about, viewing your like political stuff as well. Have your views, but when you're getting quite ranted about it, there's been times where I'm like, I need someone to do a job like this. But that person is just constantly going on about, even if, whether it's talking about Trump, whether it's talking about, UK stuff. And it's just like, actually, I might not use them because of that, just because they're very vocal. So, yes. And
that doesn't mean, like, you should have your opinion. Like, we don't want everyone to have the same thought process. And like I said, it's not like there's not a place for criticism in today's society. It's just like, how are you going about it? And just thinking about, just think about what you're putting in to the world. And are you contributing, or are you just taking away? So.
Yeah, it's a balance, because I find that the people that I enjoy working with the most are people that, for instance, Chris DeLorenzo, he did like the branding for me a couple years ago. And he was super easy to work with. But then when he sent it to me, I was like, well, what if we do this and that? He was like, I'll do it for you, but you're wrong. But but I'll show you. And he did it, and he put the work in, and he posted it for me, and then he showed it to me, and he was right. I was wrong. And man, that was one of the best positive experiences ever with like someone that did work, because he told me his opinion, and I was paying for his opinion, and I appreciated him being like, you're wrong, man. That's not the way to go. But then he proved like, I'm not afraid to put the work in. It's just that I know.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, this is, like I said, what we do is dependent on clients. Like, we're designers, we need those guardrails. We need clients to pay us money. Their feedback is important. And sometimes you have to go that extra mile to do something that is wrong, but like to show them, because they're, a lot of times, I mean, you're a visual thinker, but sometimes most clients aren't, so they can't see things, they can't visualize it until they actually see it. So it's like, okay, I'll just do this for you. And then, and then you also have to explain, it's all about communication. You have to explain to them why that solution isn't the best, like why it doesn't.
Yes.
And not in like a slandering way, but from like a technical standpoint and from like the foundation of what we do.
It's almost like if someone says yes too much, you get nervous.
Yeah. And also I think that's where graphic designers get frustrated with clients, because you actually have to look inward and have to ask yourself, are you actually telling the client in a, as you said, the correct way, and explaining to them technically and from an aesthetic point of view why it's not going to work, or are you just shutting up and doing it? Because if you're just shutting up and doing it, you're going to hate your job.
Dance, monkey, dance.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to just be a production monkey.
Yeah, so people often moan about that, but I don't think they're doing the graph to actually get their point across.
I've had it before where I did what you're talking about, Bob, and I was like, I'm going to show them what they're talking about to show them how awful it is.
Yeah.
And then I had the big reveal, and I was super smug, like, I told you so. And they instantly were like, I love it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
well, and to sit here, I can't sit here and tell you that there hasn't been times where a client has suggested something and I thought it was the wrong decision, much like you, Dustin, and it turned out to be the better solution. Like, and you just humble yourself and you say, if you just take the feedback and then register it, and let it sink in and then figure out how you want to apply that, and not make like a fuss out of it in the beginning, then there's no like, you kind of miss that the humbling yourself is just internal and you don't actually have to say those words to the client. But you can just, there's been times where that's happened where the client has asked me to do something. I'm like, this is a terrible idea. And it's actually turned out better, Yeah.
And it's weird how you only learn that lesson much later on as a designer. I mean, initially you think everything you do is brilliant, like the client's going to be wrong. But yeah, it's a good thing to constantly remember in the back of your mind. Even now, with the stuff that we all do, when a customer complains, you automatically go to they're obviously wrong. And then when you look into it, you realize, oh damn, I actually did, I didn't do this, or I forgot to do that, or that's wrong, or so it's it's a hard lesson to learn, but it's something that'll really save you time if you keep reminding yourself that you could be wrong.
Well, and the funny part is when you tell people that you're wrong or that you did something, they're so much more forgiving than if like they say with the whole Nixon thing. They're always like, the cover up is what got him in trouble, not the actual thing. Right? Like, I remember the other day, we were price testing a product, and someone was like, "Hey, why was the price different this day from the other day?" It could have just lied and been like, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're crazy." But that would not be cool. So I was just like, we were price testing. We price test, and here's why we do it. And hope that wasn't a bad taste in your mouth. And if it was, then let me give you a credit or do something for you. But yeah, like the worst part would be like lying about it. And then someone's like, he's a liar that price tests and then hides it.
Yeah. I mean, as a parent, I can't tell you how many times I've had to humble myself in front of my kids, for overreacting, or something like that. And then having to go back and be like, I'm sorry. Here's what you did. And that's why it's wrong. But the way I reacted to that, isn't the right way to handle these things. So I apologize for that. And like, Bob,
I've never had humbling... my parents say that to me.
Well, and like part of it is like I said, I had great parents. But I know when I grew up, there was times when I like feared my dad. Like I didn't want to get in trouble, because he was, he was stricter. And a lot of times that just came from like how many hours he was working, and he was tired. And the last thing he wanted to do was come home and deal with me, who wasn't listening or didn't do something I was supposed to do. So just and honestly, the foundation for that comes from my Christian background and being a believer and trying to like be a better person and care about my legacy and how I'm going to leave my kids and how they're going to raise. And that's something that's newer for me. That whole humbling myself in front of my kids or other people. It's not always them. It's them more than others, but sometimes it can be my wife or friends. But yeah, you just have to be willing to say, hey, I messed up.
Yeah,
my bad.
That's
my
such
bad.
Good advice.
I was going to say that as a parent, and maybe Ian, I'm curious if you've had this issue too. I've done that too, and I feel like they need to watch you humble yourself in front of them because they're so little. I think it's important for them to realize I may be way older, I may have complete authority over you, but I'm also totally wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
But have you ever experienced they're screaming and then I scream at them to stop screaming. And then the hypocrisy is so thick that even though they don't understand the word hypocrisy, they understand hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done that? And I'm like, whoa, sorry guys.
All the time.
Yeah. Well, and then I know sometimes like I can come home, and if I'm in a bad mood or something and I respond to something in a manner I shouldn't, then sometimes like that will trigger like my wife too. And like next thing you know, she's responding in a way that she wouldn't, normally respond to. And that stuff can like roll downhill. Like it's amazing how one person's attitude or the way they responded to something can change, the whole scene of something.
Massively. We did an episode recently on you being the sum of the 5 people you spend most time with. Obviously, my life is in a bit of a shambles given the amount of time I spend with these three. But you're completely right. It has like a knock-on effect.
Yeah, like that's something. Being in this like moment of retrospection that I kind of feel like I'm in. There's been times in the last year or something where I've made a decision to do something, professionally or whatever, and then you get there and I realize like I shouldn't be here. Why am I here spending time with this? Like I should be doing something else. Like I made a decision between two things. And so not only that, like being aware of how you spend your time, but like firm believer in you are who you spend the most time with. There's a reason why, after 11 years of marriage, like my wife and I have like rubbed off on each other a little bit, where I'm slightly more organized and she's slightly, less organized, like to some degree,
Which that was diplomatic.
Yeah. I love how careful you were getting that. I thought you were going to say she's slightly, more perfect.
Yeah, she is.
If you're
She's more perfect.
I heard some comedian, he's talking and he's like, with me and my wife, he's like, I go to the therapist and it's like, we're always working on me. He's like, why are we always just working on me?
My wife always is like crouching tiger, hidden dragon with Marie Kondo stuff around the house.
Example.
Like my drawers, all the t-shirts are like rolled up, plugged in. They're all in colour order now as well. Because like the thing is, left to my own devices, I will leave all my clothes beside my bed.
Yes.
Like when I was a teenager, I had one chair in my room, and on the back of that chair was every piece of clothing I owned. That would just end. And that's just that's automatic. I don't have to think about that. But keeping things tidy, like my clothes or keeping my studio tidy, takes a lot of effort on my part. If some people
studio looks immaculate every week.
But that's because everything is this side of the monitor.
Right. Like if you look at my desk too, like same as your place, just piled.
I collect it all and push it that way, and I go, can't see it out this way.
But it's funny because like in my room upstairs, I used to put my clothes on the side of my bed, and now I have a walk-in closet. So now my walk-in closet is like, have you ever seen like a ball house where you like kids go play in the balls? It's like that with clothes where you walk in, it's just like this thick of clothes, and the kids are just like rolling through it.
Do you open it? Do you open it in the morning? It just goes.
Yeah, your wife's like the British Marie Kondo or whatever, so maybe she can consult with some of us.
Yeah. Get her on the channel.
Okay, well, I obviously didn't inherit that chromosome as a woman. I'm missing that.
What? You're not very clean, as in keeping the house tidy.
Glad you clarified.
Have a watch, Lisa. Come on.
Apologies, didn't mean to.
I'm extremely messy. I'm very, very messy. I you know what it is? I don't have the time.
But extremely hygienic, to be clear.
Yeah.
Like, I think, Lisa, what happens is that your house is messy, but your files and your products are very clean.
Oh,
so
very.
Transposing it into something else.
I know. When it comes to things that have to be, and then I'm like so like on it. But like my clothes don't have to be neat. Like my desk doesn't have to be neat. So it isn't.
I think that's one of the most impressive segues we've ever had. Bob Ewing, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, that's so good.
Bob, do you mind if we do some quick fire with you?
Love it.
Yeah? Cool. And so what I'm going to say is if we all kind of circulate around, have some work and design related questions or some random ones, just to get to know Bob better. But any information that we can pluck from his brain, basically. So
it's a scary place. Speaking of being unclean and untidy.
So Bob, have you got any productivity tips? Because you seem to have a great output.
Yeah. A lot of times people will, and I've done this before where, like I was saying, I can't start on a project if I haven't like figured out a solution. Sometimes you're like paralyzed by a project starting it. You can often, every time I take on a job, there's this fear, like when I start it, that like it's excitement, but then the next thing after the excitement wears off in about 3.2 seconds is this fear of like, crap, now I have to do this. So people, you can be paralyzed by that. But like, you have to start somewhere. So like, start with the simplest thing, like a sketch. Like, I think that's why I'm such a proponent of sketching. That's why I always carry like a field notes and a pen with me. I will make lists. Sometimes I will like write the definition of a word or like do word association or word lists and then start sketching. And there's something like just loose and freeing about it that, and a lot of times like that's where for me like something special or the magic will happen. So I think productivity, like just start, even if you don't know where, like start at the beginning of your process. Yeah.
Nice.
I like it. Who's up next?
Well, my question was kind of going to tie into that. The fact that you do a lot of work on paper when, I mean, a lot of your work is obviously to clients and everything is digital, but you still start on paper. What's your love for that? Because that interests me because I have the same love for paper work.
Yeah, I think I've boiled it down to the fact that I really enjoy drawing. Like I enjoy like the visceral feeling of drawing, and it just brings me joy. And I don't get that same joy, or the process feels different to me when it's like on an iPad. So I've tried, like I have an iPad Pro. I use it occasionally. I don't use it enough to own one, probably, unfortunately. But I feel like my process just has to start on paper. There's just something to me about writing something down, and that like feeling of, pen to paper, pencil to paper. And that's like, it's just something that I don't get with the iPad, which is why it's been a struggle for me to kind of adapt that into my workflow. It's almost
like an extension of your brain. Well, for me, it's like an extension of my brain. It's weird.
With the paper or with the iPad?
No, sorry.
Yeah, like Ian, I've seen him use it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ian. I don't know if you the iPad, and you seem so natural. It's like at this point your right forearm is sponsored by Apple. It just literally is an extension.
I wish it was sponsored by Apple. But yeah, I have a piece of paper and a pencil always in front of me.
Okay.
So anything I do does start, like Bob says, the problem with the iPad is, one, I get so distracted with all the tools.
Yep.
And the fact that you can undo is like, actually, it's really beneficial when I'm working on it. But when you're trying to get as many ideas out there, perfection starts to take over, and you just do like that one sketch is the only thing you do because you can just keep building upon it. Whereas on a bit of paper, like trying to like rub it out or trying to do it doesn't really work. And so you just do a new one, and it's easier to, it's always been part of my process of just getting rough ideas out, and you need to get, whether they're good or bad, you just need to get out as many ideas. And the paper is the quickest and easiest way to do that. And then once you're you can see, like Bob says, you can start seeing like a way out the trees or where that's going. Then that's when I transfer over to the iPad, because otherwise I'll be on it for ages and I just won't get anywhere. So it needs to start, with pencil and paper.
I think you said it perfectly. There's a simplicity to the process when you're just talking about a piece of paper and a pen. You don't get distracted by everything else. Plus, sometimes, the iPad will make decisions for you while you're doing it. It's a computer, it's a tool. So sometimes it will make decisions like how a curve looks, and so be it. But like on a paper, a curve is like how you draw it. And like you said, sometimes that little mark that was an accident ends up being something special. Like,
definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. How about you, Big D?
Yeah, I have the Tim Ferriss question for you, which is, what thing, and it can be anything, doesn't have to be design related. What thing under $100 have you purchased in the past couple months or past year that you couldn't live without?
Man.
Oh, that's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
But it's so cool for people when someone says something like, "Oh, this was a neato thing that I got, and it was affordable, and it's amazing."
Yeah, it's weird. I'm actually in a purging state right now, so I've been selling some stuff like that I've collected over the years, that like other people have value in and other people appreciate, instead of just sitting in a flat file. been going through and selling some old concert posters.
Are you becoming a minimalist?
No, not at all. Like I'm in the process of making like a home office because like since I'm going to be working from home, and I like trying to collect like what do I want to be surrounded by? Like what are these things that I, like the posters hanging behind you, Dustin, the stuff, and your guys' offices. But man, that's a tough question.
I wouldn't even know how to answer that.
I bought some Lego the other day for myself.
For yourself?
It was
What's $100 worth?
Yeah, it was it was half price. And so I got the Porsche, not the massive Porsche, but like still the Technics Porsche, GTS or GTR, whatever it is. But yeah, telling my kids.
I love that you know the exact kind of Porsche. It's very funny.
Did your kids try and play with it? And you're like,
they're like, brilliant, you bought us a present. I was like, actually, this is for me. They're like, they just looked at me like, what? And I was like, look, I hardly ever buy anything for myself. And I said, look, I'm going to be the project manager, because the problem is when they do Lego, they go, Dad, come and play with me with Lego, which means you come and just turn over the page of the instruction booklet. That's it. I just watch them and turn over the page. So I was like, that's it. It was on offer, and I was like, it was like Technic stuff, and I was like, that's it. For the first time ever, I'm going to buy myself some Lego.
That's so cool.
And they're going to help me, but I'm going to be like, well, this is the bit you're going to help me with.
They're going to turn the page now.
Yeah.
The shoe's on the other foot.
They go, yeah, I can see what you mean, Dad. This was boring.
Completely agree with you. Dustin, for lack of better answers, I would say like this. Like I buy these all the time. Like I collect these. I have a subscription to Field Notes. This is probably I carry these every single day and a pen. But this is probably something that like, a pack of 3 of these is $10 or whatever. And I fill these up, monthly probably with sketches and lists and whatever. So if it had to be something right now, that's the first thing that kind of comes to mind. I don't know if that's as exciting as what you're hoping.
What do you put in it mostly?
Mostly it's sketches and lists.
Can we see?
Writing.
Is there anything you can share?
Yeah, like to-do lists, grocery lists. Let's see. So, here's like so I just did the some TopCon lettering. I'm going to be speaking there. So like sometimes it's a pencil, these are this way. Sometimes you draw too big for one page, so you have to like write down on the next page. There's no rules to sketching. But yeah, and then there's like to-do lists and or notes like from church. I'm always taking notes. For me, I have a terrible memory, so I have to write things down to like start the process of like remembering them. My wife is always like reminding me of conversations we've had or things she has asked to do. So I have to have like at home, I'll have like a visible list that I can write that's bigger that will hang on the wall.
Yes,
so I can recall.
Will she ask you a question? You go, hang on a minute, and you'll just flick through your book.
Yeah, I would actually be smarter if I did that. Write down specifically some of the things.
I find I do the same thing mostly with computer paper. It's not nearly as sexy, but sometimes when I really feel like I have too much going on, I'll start just writing out boxes and things going on computer paper, and I'll set it next to me on the desk.
Yep.
Yeah. Something about actually touching and doing stuff helps.
Yeah.
I'm actually, this is probably an inappropriate comment to make given what's currently happening around the world, but I'm pretty sure I'm decimating the rainforest with my use of Post-it notes. It's like, honestly, they're everywhere. Like, they're all over my desk. It's like, they're my little go-to note thing. Yep. I think even when you came on and we did the live hangout, Bob, you might see me scribbling on Post-it notes because I was like, that's golden.
Doesn't it feel more chaotic, that it's like in little bits all over the place?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. Pieces. It's terrible, but I don't know. I love it and I hate it. It's double-edged sword. And I got my field notes. I got my little Draplin signed field notes, so I fangirl over that every time I look at it.
I love that.
Ian, have you got a final quick-fire question for Diego?
Yes. So, how did you keep coming up with content ideas? I know you mentioned when you were doing your lettering, I know you mentioned that you were delving into stuff that you're passionate about, but how did you keep, like, how did you decide what to letter or what to post?
Yeah,
were you organized? Were you like, okay, here's a list for the next 30 days? Or were you like, oh, it's lunchtime, let me think of something?
Yeah, I spent most of the time. So I think that was where the issue of time came in. Because a lot of the times it's like, okay, I sit down, I can breathe. Now I need to think about what I'm going to letter. And then at some point, probably 400 days in, I came to this realization that like what I'm lettering isn't important, but the fact that I am lettering is important. Like it was almost this aha moment and this like getting back to the roots of why I started doing that project. So I started to keep a list of short phrases or words. A lot of times it was it became a visual diary for what was going on in the world or my life. Like if it was a holiday, I would I would letter something, or someone's birthday or an anniversary. Those are easy things. But yeah, I spent wasted way too much time thinking about or trying to curate what I was actually lettering until I came to the realization that like it doesn't matter what the words say. It just what matters is that like I'm drawing letters. Like I'm getting better at this. That's what it was important. Just like I spent the first year plus 360 some days like drawing it in pencil and then inking over the top of it with microns before I realized like I just spent a whole year learning how to color. And it's like, guess what? I'm pretty good at coloring. I don't need, these can just be in pencil. They don't need to be in ink. So, reevaluating your process sometimes is important.
I think that's good for people who are maybe doing a sort of like the challenge to try and get better or to post more regularly. I think, that's good. So, knowing that it's actually the process that's the learning, not worrying too much about what actually is in the content. And it definitely had an impact on me because I sort of followed your stuff from the start, and the sheer machine that you were in those few years, I could
and like it's not for everyone, and I don't know that I would do it again. Maybe I would, like seeing the outcome, but like since I went to architecture school and I left there and I kind of wandered about doing odds and ends stuff before I really fell into graphic design. I always felt like I was behind everyone, that everyone was younger and they were better than me. And this is that imposter syndrome or this like jealousy that I think all of us deal with. And I can't say that I don't like still have some of that, but I'm definitely like I deal with it in a much better way than I did when I was younger. So like a lot of that was like, it was my way of like catching up. And I don't know if it was, I think it was beneficial professionally. And luckily my wife is loving and understanding and she could see that. But like personally, there was definitely struggles sometimes. And like ultimately that's what led to the end of it, was like me realizing that like this isn't worth it. So.
Yeah.
Bob, thank you so much for sharing so much insight today. I feel like we covered, 18 episodes worth of different topics, but it's all somehow been beautifully tied together, including Lego, especially Lego. But honestly, you've shared so openly, and it's been really, just really insightful to have that unique perspective into your world. And I don't think any of us are surprised about the success that you've had. It's pretty evident why. So thank you for sharing that with the listeners today.
Well, no, thank you for having me. I really appreciate all of you and this platform, just being able to hang out with you guys and have conversation. This is what it's all about, building relationships and with other people, sharing things. That's why we're here. So,
yep.
Hell
100%.
Bob, where can the listeners go and find you? Because every person listening to this episode right now needs to go and check out Bob online.
I'm on the social medias. It's probably the easiest. It's at Bob Ewing _. That thanks to the guy who owns that Bob Ewing, who just sits on it. and doesn't do
Man,
anything.
some lawyer
Really
doesn't
love that
use it.
guy.
Where can they find inch by inch stuff?
Hell yeah. You can same thing on social media, inch_x_inch, or just search Inch by Inch Button Club or inchxinch.org. So definitely check that out. We're getting ready to release the new. Well, by this time it'll probably be out. But yeah, we have some big things planned for Q4, so we're excited about that.
Can't wait to see it. And huge best of luck with the transition
Thank you.
career-wise, and I'm sure it's going to let you ramp things up more than ever.
Yeah, hopefully. Looking forward to it. Pretty excited. So thank you.
Yeah. Stay tuned, everyone. Cool. Thanks, Bob. Bye from all
Thank
of
you,
us.
Bob.
See you later.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.